How many times have you been frustrated because a customer asks for another round of review? Or they ask for another whole team to review your project? Or an entire rewrite? Been there, done that. In this video, I'm going to give you all of my tips on how I battle scope creep. Hi friends, my name is Vanessa Elzate, the founder and CEO of Anchored Training, and on this channel, I help instructional designers and e-learning developers level up, not only in instructional design and learning, but also in business. So today we're going to talk about scope creep. Scope creep. And I mean, this is a tough conversation, and it is never fun, and it is never easy to have these conversations. I would say it gets easier to have these conversations. And when you're new and you're starting out in the field, or just kind of starting out with creating your own scopes of work and dealing with clients more directly, these conversations, they don't come natural, they don't come easy. So it's definitely good that you are here and you are learning more about how to handle these really tough situations. So first things first, I want you to know, we have all been there. We have all dealt with clients that want another review at the last minute, add a whole team to the project, and they want to have them review it at the last minute. I have gotten, now we have to account for a medical and legal review of the course, which then takes things in a completely new direction and adds so much time. But anyway, I have definitely been through it. We've all in the industry have been through it. So you're definitely not alone. So please don't ever feel like you are alone. So first, let's talk about some things that are typically considered scope creep. And these would include things like adding additional reviewers, adding additional rounds of reviews, completely rewriting the project, adding completely new parts of the learning plan, for example, like adding an e-learning module, or adding an additional level of interactivity to the course. And this is how I write out my scopes, but I also include the length of the course in it. So let's say they contract me for a 15-minute e-learn and it turns out to be a 60-minute e-learn. Well, that is a huge scope creep. And that's when I deal with that either by offering to do a change order, or I deal with it by only giving them a 15-minute course, which is what they paid for. And sometimes they don't even realize that they are creeping on the scope, although a lot of times they actually do realize that, and they're trying to take advantage of how nice you are. But those are just some common things to look out for that are scope creep. And while, especially I find personally, rounds of review can not feel like scope creep sometimes, it definitely ends up adding more time. There are more revisions, and it definitely is scope creep, but I definitely understand, feeling like adding an extra round or two isn't really going to impede too much on the scope. But you need to make sure you set those boundaries with your client so that they completely understand, it's like kids. You have to train them from the beginning to do the right thing instead of teaching them bad habits, and then they continue on those bad habits. So there are a few ways to battle scope creep. And typically the best way to battle scope creep is before the scope creep even begins. And that is with your statement of work. And this is where you completely outline what the scope is of the project. And I am going to have an Instagram post on my @VanessaAnchored Instagram account that gives you all the different areas that I have in my statements of work. So make sure you go and check that out. So you have a nice little compliment to this video. So in my statements of work, I will include all the different tasks and what exactly is the scope of the project, right? So all the tasks are involved. Are we sourcing the video, audio? Are we sourcing animators? Are we sourcing, do we need to find videographers? Do we need to have facilitators? All the different pieces that we are responsible for. So it's very clear what I'm responsible for in my company and what the client is responsible for. Outside of the statement of work, you know that I love project management. You know that I love a good project management system. And I even have a video on how to use Trello for project management. So I will link that above for you guys so you can take a look at that. But there are a ton of project management tools that can help you keep you on track. Yeah, you can use Excel or like Google Sheets or something like that, but I just find having a true project management tool, one, elevates you as a business, because even if you're a freelancer, you're a business. You're in the business of you. And so it just has that elevation, and you have like that perceived higher value, which you are totally very valuable. But you know what I mean? It takes you up a level, right? So you act more like a business, even more professional, and really stick to your guns. And your client looks at you in that way as well. So you definitely want to make sure that you're using some sort of project management tool to track the dates, all the tasks. In my project management tool, I include the scope of work from the contract. So that way, if I bring any other contractors or things like that into the project, everyone's aware of what the scope is. So that project management tool is king. And it's something that my clients also have access to, so they could see timelines, deadlines, what they're responsible for, and we're able to communicate that way as well to keep everything housed in one place. Right now, my team is using Basecamp, and we are really loving it. It is the tool that we've been needing in order to really streamline our communications and take things out of email and right into an all-encompassing project management tool. There's only one thing that's missing, and that is an Asana type or Gantt chart type of task management portion of it. But other than that, it's the perfect tool for us. So throughout the project, you are going to have times where your client has to formally sign off on deliverables. So for example, if you're doing an e-learning module, they're going to sign off on the storyboard or the prototype or the narration script or the beta or the gold, right? And so I actually make all of my clients formally sign off on each phase, right? So whatever phase we need to have approved in order to move into the next round, my client signs off on that. And so maybe it's just an email, but I need to see a formal approval, and I document that in our project management system or in my, documentation, save it into my Google Drive or whatever. But that way, if they ever try to make changes, I can sit and say, well, you looked at the prototype and you approved it. And so now you're asking for a pretty huge change that redoes the entire project, or changes the complete look and feel. So I'm going to have to ask you I'm going to have to work out a change order for that in order for you to see the cost of making that change. And having them sign off and have that approval, well, that's just you can't argue with that, right? You approved it, now you're changing your mind, which is totally fine. There's just a cost associated with that. I can't just give up those hours that I spent on the deliverable from the beginning and not get paid for that. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, clear communication is key and it's king. And I have a video all about how I manage my clients. And so I will also link that above. But honestly, that communication, you have to communicate what it is that you're doing, have regular status meetings, have regular check-ins, really understand from the client side what it is that they are looking to get out of the project, and really understand their vision. Because so often I think that clients sign us and they act like we need to be a mind reader. And that gets really frustrating because you can't read their minds. And when you deliver something, it's not at all what they envisioned. And that really could have been avoided if you, number one, asked what they are envisioning. And you want to make sure that you have those project check-ins, because you want to make sure that they know that you're not ghosting them, right? You're actively working on the project and you're on the right track, and it really ends up with a better relationship with your client if you're able to have that clear communication and that they're able to see the progress as you go along. Along those lines, making sure that you're keeping the stakeholders and subject matter experts engaged throughout the entire process. So again, regularly checking in with them, letting them see progress, and just making sure they don't tap out, especially subject matter experts. They're so busy, and so often the training is not a priority for them that you need to kind of pull them back in. So make sure that you are pulling them back in at the appropriate times. So maybe they're not part of every check-in meeting, but maybe, once a month they do come in so they can see the progress and they can see how their contributions help towards that end deliverable. And you really do see them light up, and they realize that this could be so much more. And that's when they want to do more. And then that means more work for you. So earlier I mentioned that I do work with other team members. We have contractors that we work with when we have a ton of projects. And so often I have to make sure that those contractors understand what is in scope and what is not. So it does take an extra meeting, and I always do have an alignment call with all of my contractors so everyone understands what it is that we're delivering. So for example, if it's an e-learning course, they understand the level and the complexity and kind of like if they bought the Honda or the Ferrari, and where we kind of need to be. This has happened actually in the past where I've seen contractors that deliver a Ferrari for the price of a Honda, and it put the company that I was working with in a really bad position because now that client expected the Ferrari for the Honda price. And it's really hard to make them pay for the Ferrari price when they've already paid the Honda price and they received the Ferrari. You know what I'm getting at? There's a lot of car analogies. And I'm not a huge car fan, although I have been very into Fast and the Furious lately. Maybe it's because I heart Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. Oof, R.I.P. If there's a Paul Walker doll out there, I could use that to add with my Dylan McKay doll.
Dude, I almost had you.
I digress. But yeah, you definitely want to make sure that you are being completely upfront with your contractors, letting them know how many hours they have to work on this project, what the deliverables are supposed to look like, and what is within scope and what's out of scope for the project. And just make sure you're checking in on them, right? If you have contractors, they are working on your behalf and they're an extension of you. So make sure that you are treating them as such and you are, coaching them and mentoring them, and it works out for a better relationship for the both of you. And then another way I really do battle scope creep is I refer back to the scope and I stick to my guns, and you have to say no. And sometimes that is challenging and sometimes that is a little weird and it can be tough to just flat out say no, especially when you are new and you really want to work with the client. You don't want to, lose the contract, but you really do need to make sure that you are standing up for yourself and you are making sure that you're getting paid for anything additional outside of what they have already paid for, they've said they would pay for. And so I say, no, I'm sorry, that's not within the scope, but I can create a change order so that, we can include those pieces of the project, or I can absolutely do that and we can just, work off of like an hourly rate for whatever extra reviews or whatever, if it's like a smaller types of things. But just let them know that there is a cost associated with what they're asking for. And then make sure you get that in writing with a change order. And so if you want to learn more about change orders and what I include there, give this video a thumbs up and I can definitely do that for you. So friends, I think you heard earlier that I talked a lot about, making sure you understand the client's vision and what they want from the beginning, and really setting the expectations from the beginning. Well, the really cool thing is that you all know by now, I'm having the Anchored in Learning Virtual Summit, September 9th and 10th. It is totally free. But with that, I'm also giving away a free 10 questions that you need to make sure you have answered at the project kickoff meeting in order to kick off a really successful project. So make sure you register for the Anchored in Learning Summit so you can get a copy of that. And those are questions that I need to make sure I get answered every single time that I have a project. And that way we are completely on track, on target, and it helps to battle scope creep, to be totally honest with you. Well, friends, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.